Teaching is like horseback riding. Being a horse-crazy person through and through, relating teaching to my love of horses might seem like a comparison made thoughtlessly, chosen only for its obvious simplicity. Like horseback riding itself, however, it's meant to look effortless, when really there is a lot of hidden work that is easily missed by the untrained eye. This is especially true of dressage, my riding sport of choice. Dressage involves constantly striving to achieve unobtainable perfection. I ride with the knowledge I will never be perfect, but that I should always be trying to get better, and I'm constantly learning different methods to accomplish that. Dressage has therefore taught me to become a humble lifelong learner, both in the saddle and at the front of the classroom. Horseback riding involves the unknown. Every time I get on a horse, I'm aware that I could lose control, I could fall, I could encounter unexpected difficulties, resistance, or anger. Nevertheless, I get on because I usually find a partnership instead, with a horse who is willing to go along for the ride because he wants to, not because he has to. That feeling of partnership makes the risk worth it, and I believe the same is true of teaching. I go into the classroom every day not knowing what I will encounter. After all, I don't know what happened with my students the night before, or even 2 minutes ago in the hall. All of these outside influences can have an effect, just as the subtlest change in environment can affect a horse. Because I cannot control everything in the environment, and as I cannot force a horse to do anything he doesn't want to, I need to listen to the horse first. Therefore, I need to approach both horseback riding and the classroom with a willingness to learn and adapt based on what emotions I encounter. The best way to do this, I've discovered, is through sharing. I care strongly about the development of effective, healthy, and valuable student-teacher relationships which allow me to know my students as human beings first and foremost. I strive to always invite opportunities for students to share with me the parts of their lives that they care strongly about, whether through a few words before class or in a journal, a tool that inspired me to become a teacher and continues to drive my philosophy. This comes back to learning early on that horseback riding is not about power. It is not about being master over the horse, but rather developing a relationship where the horse wants to be with me and tries to do what I ask. This means learning the language of each individual horse, putting that first, and then setting him up for success by factoring in his personality. In other words, it requires differentiated instruction. As a rider, I begin from the position of the learner, figuring out what the horse will respond to best. I have transferred this method into the classroom by beginning each practicum by asking my students to be my teachers at the same time that I'm teaching them. I begin with this request in order to begin a relationship based on partnership, not power, making students the drivers of their education in the same way that I allow individual horses that I encounter to talk with me before trying to direct them. This requires some vulnerability, but the payoff is huge when the horse or the student responds from a place of trust. I firmly believe that you cannot achieve an effective student-teacher relationship without this initial vulnerability and humility in order to help balance out the power dynamics, two traits that any rider will develop after hitting the dirt for the first time. In more ways than one, riding has prepared me well for the classroom. My values of sharing and partnership are ultimately why I chose horseback riding as a metaphor behind my philosophy of teaching. If I ask students to share the things they value with me, I need to be willing to do the same in return. My students quickly learn about my passion for horses because it is a part of my identity. Over time, I often also share some of the emotional trials that go with such a passion, which helps students connect with me on a more personal level because they recognize this honesty as evidence of the trust I place in them, as well as my respect. In return, I have had many students connect to that passion in various different ways, making them comfortable enough to share pieces of their identity with me. This is the beginning of a student-teacher partnership, and from there I know my subject teaching becomes more effective, relevant, and long-lasting. My willingness shows that I value my students not just as students who need to be taught the curriculum, but as travelers on a journey, or perhaps as a horse and human on a ride.